Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen, Rob Shmuel, with this week's 10-minute Torah. So first, a shout out to a couple of people, but most of all to Judy Grabiner. Judy, wonderful chanting of last week's Haftorah for beautiful. And also, I don't know if I've acknowledged Alan Brown a few weeks ago when he chanted the Haftorah as well. And folks, as a rabbi, it makes me so proud when I see congregants taking the initiative to chant a Haftorah, or as the Pomerances are going to do, blow the shofarot, during the high holidays, or even when you folks do an English responsive reading, getting people involved, feeling that kavod, for your heritage, that you want to participate in centuries-long traditions, and you want to actually get involved. It's so beautiful. We're all a team. We're all a team. And please, if you ever want to get involved and do part of the service, my answer is a default. It's yes. If you need if you need me to help you, to kind of tutor or lead you in a certain direction, please let me know. That's what I'm here. The word rabbi comes from the word rav, okay? And the word has kind of the connotation of teacher, but it really means great. And my certificate says Rav Umorah, rabbi and teacher. And the way I see it, it's my job to help make you great as a person, as a Jew, right? So again, love to see that initiative. And again, Judy, wonderful job. Thank you so much. So this week's portion, oh, and by the way, I also, before we get into this week's portion of Shoftim, I just want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. Yes, Happy New Year. No, I'm not a month early. Elul is coming up this week, and the month of Elul kind of starts the high holiday season. That's also why I'm not saying Happy New Year. Elul is one of the 4 New Years that we have in Judaism. That's right, there are 4. Elul is the beginning of the year for animals. You know how we say Tu B'Shvat, the holiday, the tree's new year? Well, what is that all about? What is Tu B'Shvat is the tree's new year, and what is Elul for the animals' new year? Well, in the Torah, it talks about the firstborn, about when when we plant new trees, then we have to wait 3 years, and then the first year it's given, the produce is given to the Kohanim and the Levites, and after that, it's ours, minus the 10%, the tithe, the contribution to the temple. With the animals, it's the same thing. When we're dedicating the firstborn of our cattle or our herd, the firstborn goes to the Kohanim, and we use the month of Elul as the new year to determine the year, right? So that's a new year. Also, it's when we start reciting Psalm 27. The Lord is my life, Ori, Adonai, Ori, and that's part of the prayers that we start with the high holidays, and we blow the shofar after each morning shachrit, except on Shabbat. So it's a very important time of the year, and we'll talk more about that as we go on. So let's talk about Shoftim. So this is how we're going to, when we get into the Promised Land, we're going to organize a system of the judicial, of the judges. And with that comes some instructions that you don't show favoritism to anybody. And this has been addressed before, but of course this is a review. Deuteronomy, the word deuter means second, and this is a retelling, and Deuteronomy is also called Mishnah Torah. Mishnah comes from the word sheni, which means second, and it's the second retelling, and it's the second retelling because this is a new generation, hasn't really heard a lot of this before because they were born in the desert. They're going to take the land, and they're going to know these things, and they're going to have to know how to set up a system of courts. Another thing that we discuss here is the idea of setting a king to not rule over them. If you really consider the Jewish concept of a king is really kind of a figurehead. Now, in times of war, and when we're going to battle, a king needs to kind of be in charge. It needs to be the figurehead and the central figure to organize things. But other than that, who's in charge of the Israelites? Torah, that's right. And of course, you've got, the clans and the princes of the tribes and the princes of the clans. And those are the people that guide. But other than that, I mean, life goes on, right? Think about it. You get up. If you're a cattle herder, then you get your cattle, your herd, and you do what that has to be done. If you're a farmer, then you have to farm the land, till the land. The process of seeding and then letting it grow and then harvesting. And we've got the various festivals, the pilgrimage festivals that coincide with agricultural events. So a lot of it's really taken care of. A king really is there kind of to supervise. And what does a king need to do? A king needs to have king is a man, own copy of the Torah. Now, it's interesting that part of the verbiage, depending on how you read it, in the Torah says a king will have written. And some commentators will say that that means that the king has to have the Levites write for him, but still studies. Some people will say that the king needs to write for himself a copy of the Torah. Now, for those of us that have been through school, there is an expression that one of my teachers, one of my professors told me, and that is learning through the hands. You write something and you learn through writing, because as you're writing, you're seeing the words, you're writing the words, and you learn it. So I would submit to you that really the king ought to be writing the Torah for himself, because he's going to learn it. And then, of course, it doesn't end there. A king is supposed to be studying Torah so they know what the laws are and how to rule, right? And God also says that, I will pick. And of course, how does God pick things? He picks usually through prophets. Prophets are typically mouthpieces and spokespeople for God. And I say spokespeople because, yes, we've had female prophets, Miriam, Deborah, right? Some people say Ruth might have been a prophetess. Who knows? It depends on your point of view. But it's really kind of a whole, not a hierarchy, but it's kind of a group. Everybody's kind of got their own place. One of the comments in the Eitz Chaim Chumash, which is the newest conservative Chumash, says basically that prophets are actually above kings in the pecking order of things, especially because what is Judaism? Okay, yes, we're a heritage, yes, we're a people, but the code of ethics that we call Torah comes directly from God to the prophets to the kings. See, so it's interesting. Now, a few other points of interest too that I'm going to comment on this particular portion. First of all, there's a very famous saying that is in this particular portion: Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof. Justice, justice shall you follow. Now, in ancient Hebrew, they don't use the word very. Instead, to denote something more than the regular, what they say is they just double the word. And we see a lot of word doubles in this portion, but specifically tzedek, tzedek. What is tzedek? It's justice. Tzedakah is charity. Now, it's the word that we use for charity, but basically we're doing good things for people because we're doing justice for God, right? And it says, justice, justice, tirdof shall you pursue. But pursue means kind of chase after. So the double meaning, the doubling of the word tzedek, of justice, shows you that it's something that's very important, and pursuing, you must really just devote yourself to run after it and always do justice, okay? One of the other things it talks about with kings, and you're all going to know what I'm going to talk about with this, is that it says kings really shouldn't be into amassing power. They have a palace, maybe they rule from that, but things that kings don't do is amass a lot of horses. They don't go to Egypt and get a lot of horses, just in case they need, for like the charioteers, like they're amassing an army to do their bidding. They don't have a lot of wives. They don't have a lot of gold and silver amassed to them. Now, don't have a lot of wives. Who are we thinking of? That's right, King Solomon. King Solomon asked for wisdom when he was a king, and he thought that with his wisdom he could kind of outsmart the Torah. And as we know what happened, he couldn't. So it's kind of interesting that here we are. Here's the admonition for the kings not to amass a lot of horses, not to amass a lot of wives, not to amass a lot of precious metals. And yet what happens when the wisest man ever does this, thinking he could get away with it. He can't. So those commandments are there for a very specific reason. And Moses warns them. He tells them, stick to the commandments. Don't follow your heart, right? We talk about this. He also says, again, and this is an ongoing theme, don't commingle with the Canaanite tribes. You're going to dispossess them of the land. Get rid of them. Don't go after any dream diviners, any false prophets. Very important, do not add or subtract from the Torah. It is perfect as it is because it's God's law and God is perfect. Okay, thank you very much for listening. And as you've seen, I also have the Bar Torah that are coming out, which is a more specific retelling of what this portion is. I'll have the sermons on there. And again, any questions, any comments, please reach out to me. Call me. I'm in the office certain times. I've got my hours there. You can text me. You can go on my website, Stevens with a ph.com. I've got a chat there. I've got a file share if you want to put something down. So let me know. Meantime, Shabbat Shalom. Look forward to seeing you on Zoom for services.